Welcome to understand Anurag's Phygital Montessori approach of education given the current situation. Let's start with what actually Maria Montessori has in mind when she thought about education. I quote, our care for the child should be governed not by the desire to make him learn things, but by the endeavor always to keep burning within him that light which is called intelligence. I'd like you to focus on the three key aspects, which is learning, burning, and intelligence. This is the heart of the Montessori system. It's very important to understand why Montessori stands very different when compared to all the other methodologies and pedagogies of education. There is a wonderful video that was created for this very specific purpose by an American, which I'm reusing here because it very beautifully encapsulates all the key aspects that any parent should understand why Montessori is the best system of education for their child.
My three children attend a Montessori school, and recently a fellow parent told me of her own bright, engaged, inquisitive son who had attended Montessori for a few years until a job loss in the family forced her to enroll him in a nearby, free, conventional public school. As she picked him up from his new bus stop, day after day, she began to notice something. She said, I saw the light in his eyes dimming. His flame was extinguishing. She didn't talk about her son's grades at the new school, nor about the teacher qualifications, class size, or extracurricular activities. She didn't talk about how he would compete with China or increase our GDP. She talked about the flame inside him, dimming, extinguishing. To me, the fanning of this inner flame, the inner drive to learn and to develop, is the core contrast between Montessori schools and conventional schools. Conventional schools assume children need incentives for learning. Gold stars, A's, honor roll ribbons, popcorn parties. If they don't respond, they must be dealt punishments, bad grades, trips to the principal's office, etc. Montessori schools assume the opposite. Children do not need to be forced to learn. In fact, children are naturally interested in learning. Take a look at any child prior to kindergarten. They touch everything, pick it up, turn it over, taste it. Prior to setting foot in that first classroom, they've learned how to stand, walk, swim, sing, count, ride a bike, tell stories and jokes and lies. Some can even read. And then these energetic, engaged, accomplished 6-year-olds turn into 12-year-olds who ask, are we getting graded on this? Or, is this going to be on the test? That flame they had at age 6 didn't burn out on its own. We smothered it. In contrast, Montessori schools stoke that flame by promoting hands-on, self-paced, collaborative, challenging, and joyful learning. They encourage divergent thinking instead of convergent thinking, innovation instead of standardization. Montessori does all this with no grades, no tests, no homework. How? Well, out of many reasons, here are two. Mixed-age classrooms. Montessori classrooms have 3-year age ranges. 3 to 6-year-olds in one class, 6 to 9-year-olds in another, and so on. The age mix allows older students to be leaders, mentors, and to help teach lessons, while younger students have the experience of working with older classmates. The teacher does not stand at the front, delivering the same information to 30 children while trying to keep all of them on the same page. Instead, the teacher moves around the room, working with students, one-on-one or in small groups. The age mix allows a child working on, for example, addition, to to sit near another student working on multiplication. Each can see not only what they'll be doing in the near future and where they've been in the past, but why they're learning what they're learning and how it fits into the big picture. Seeing the big picture allows students to take ownership of their learning, a critical element in fostering each child's natural learning desire. Which leads to point two, grabbing that student's interest while it's hot. A Montessori teacher told me about an 8-year-old girl in her class interested in long division. After demonstrating some examples, the teacher watched the girl create her own simple division problem. But after finding the quotient, the girl added another digit to the dividend, and another, and continued the calculation into the hundreds, thousands, then 10,000s, 100,000s, then millions, billions, trillions. As the calculations began to near the bottom of the page, the teacher, thinking quickly, brought over more paper and some tape. Hours later, when the girl decided she was done, there were so many sheets of paper taped to each other that when the teacher taped the first one to the ceiling, the last one hung all the way to the floor. Children in Montessori follow their interests wherever that passion leads, however quickly it leads them, regardless of what other students in the class are working on. Can you imagine this little girl having any problem whatsoever with calculus in high school when she already does ceiling to floor long division problems at age 8? Can you imagine the look in her eyes when her mom picks her up from school? Montessori is the best method of schooling I have found for children to joyfully and effectively learn independence, responsibility, self-discipline, leadership, initiative, strong academics, and a lifetime love of learning. I urge you to visit a Montessori classroom to see for yourself. Sit in a class for 30 minutes. See the light in the children's eyes.
Beautiful, isn't it? Going ahead, I'd first like to start explaining to you what Anurag itself is. Anurag started in the year 1992 by beloved founder Mrs. Shamala because of her love and passion for children. We are in Jainagar in the south of Bangalore, and when it opened, it was one of the first in South Bangalore. This is firmly imbibed in the beauty of Montessori, of education, which is a holistic approach, which addresses not just the child's physical, emotional, but social and cognitive facets as well. And till today, it is completely based on the Montessori method alone. The vision of Anurag. Our work culture is guided by the principles set by Dr. Maria Montessori completely, and also the aspect of the Indian culture when we talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning the world is one family. Creating a passion for enriching our children with a sense of wonder, inquisitiveness, and sensitizing them to become holistic individuals has always been the endeavor at Anurag. Respect for oneself and others, being supportive, compassionate individuals is the underlying principle that has guided Anurag since its inception. The philosophy of Anurag is very similar as such. We believe and have the motto as well that every child has the potential to be a genius. This is something which we firmly have believed from day one. Inculcating a strong sense of responsibility, integrity, patriotism really sums up the core beliefs of everything that we do in Anurag. When we talk about Indian culture and tradition, a lot of things actually overlays with the Montessori approach. When we talk about our culture, our beliefs, the first thing that is told is understand and then follow, which precisely is what Maria Montessori also has profoundly put into place in her methodology as well. From a credentials perspective, so the faculty that we have at Anurag have a combined teaching experience of over 90 years. Our director, Mrs. Shamala, was interviewed by All India Radio way back in 1995 when she had to talk about the key differences between the regular system and the Montessori system of education. The interview was very successful and ran a couple of times as well. She was also awarded with a citation for her outstanding achievement in the field of Montessori education by the Inner Wheel of Rotary Southwest Bangalore in 2003. Anurag has also been consistently visited by several international Montessori teachers and schools from Malaysia and other Southeast Asian countries. They actually wanted to visit and to understand and observe what a thorough Montessori system looks like, how the environment is set up, how the children and the adults engage with each other when actually they're actually doing activities, but the child is learning whole lot more, be it in language, in arithmetic, in sensorial activities, which is how Montessori is actually taught. Anurag has always been accredited and recognized by the Indian Montessori Association since its inception, wherein we get the certificate that every aspect of Montessori is completely followed here. Moving ahead, some of the activities that are there in a regular year in the curriculum of Anurag goes thus. So, one of the key aspects is one day in the year, though the parents are welcome anytime, there is a specific day set called the observation day, wherein the parents actually come and sit for an hour with the child and they actually see what the child has actually learned, be it any sorts of activities across the first, second, or third year of Montessori. The parent can completely see themselves how the child has actually improved and at what stage he or she is at right now. And they also can interact with the other teachers and the other parents that come. The other thing, there are various other activities that are done in the school like Chapati Day, Belpuri Day. So these are all of the various things which look like just random things that are being done. But please understand that behind all of these things are very specific principles of Montessori that are being addressed. When we talk about exercises of practical life, sensorial, all of these activities help the child when they actually make a chapati, when they cut the fruits and vegetables for bhel puri and things like that, they actually are using their own hands, gauging what the thickness should be, how much of pressure to be applied, all of which is very important when it comes to writing, as well as all the other aspects physically that a child needs to concentrate on at their specific age. Anurag also celebrates all of the main festivals and the national holidays, as well as certain key days like Teachers' Day, Children's Day, Yoga Day, Earth Day, where the children are taught about key aspects on that day so that they also focus and very well appreciate what actually is being celebrated on that day. The artwork that is done on that day is also suited on that, and the activities on that day are also based on the same theme, which adds to the facet that a child is not just what they need to learn from an education perspective, but the emotional quotient as well, and the social quotient as well. There is an annual field trip based on how and when the field trip is arranged. It can vary from couple of years the children went to a dairy farm, sometimes a biscuit factory, maybe a national park, things like that, wherein within the same day the children travel together. They experience the learning and the education in the area that they're visiting and then come back. All of this happens during school hours itself. So, from a parent's perspective, the child starts their day in the same way just as any other day and ends at the same time as well. But the important thing to understand is the aspect of reality of society is got into the child through this as well. Some of the other thing which is also very key is when we talk about children, they love a stage, which I'm sure all of you understand. Some children more than the other. The annual day is where the children actually express their skill in terms of dance, in terms of music, in terms of puppet shows, and various other things that they have done. We have had children who've done Shakespeare plays for a piece. They have recited classical music. They have done excellent dancing because they go to other dance schools as well. So, this platform that Anurag provides for these young children is to showcase their talent and get over the concept of stage fright. There are various other events that are also organized, like certain days there are parents are invited to a dentist day wherein they can get their children's teeth, the health of their teeth checked, and various other aspects in such a way wherein it caters to all other aspects of growing up. The facilities, when we talk about Anurag, can be divided into three. First of all, the key thing is that the layout of the school that has been created and constructed is very aesthetically pleasing, has a lot of sunlight, is very airy, and also conforms to all of the things that are needed from a Montessori perspective. This wasn't something which was refurbished or reconditioned to become a school, but it was built from scratch to be a Montessori school. So everything within the environment is at the height that the child can use themselves, like the sink, the toilets, and all of the facilities is designed for the child to be enabled by themselves. The outdoor play area also plays a very integral part because this is where children get accustomed to understanding how it is when you want to do something with others, when you want to play games, the concept of turn taking. And also, all of these things are opportunities for the child to automatically imbibe these essential qualities, such as sharing, being together. This is something which is priceless and also is a part of the Montessori education. Given the current situation, the phygital, meaning the physical and the digital approach to Montessori, which is labeled as Montessori at home, is something that has been very successfully conducted in Anurag. So we'll come to it from an approach perspective in consecutive slides, but this is one of the facility at Anurag as well. Coming to the approach of the Phygital Montessori, in this section, I would like to elaborate how the approach is, what are the tools and enablers that are used as such. Please keep in mind that when we talk about a Phygital approach, we do not talk about online classes for a child, but various tools that are available for the adult that works with the child to get understanding themselves and then they work with the child. There is no instance where the child would actually have to look at a video or a recording or attend any kind of a class online. Keeping in mind the tender age and the health, we do not want to increase the screen time, which already children would have in terms of television and tablets and phones. Montessori, per se, is completely focused on working with the adult, working with physical activities based on the surrounding, which is exactly what we have created as part of the Phygital Montessori approach. Some of the key things that we first would have to concentrate on is understanding the five dictums that actually form the core of Montessori. Without further ado, the first thing is respect the child. The child in a Montessori education or a setup is free to choose what he or she wants to learn, given also that it's the appropriate age for them. The most important thing that an adult in Montessori does is they observe without any judgment. If you go to a Montessori school, the first thing you'll actually observe is Nobody is forcing the child to come into school and start working, like how it is in a regular school wherein they ring the bell and all the children have to sit down on their benches and start working on the same aspect or the same subject. Here, when the child is ready, when they're satisfied by playing outside, some take a week, some take a month. But nonetheless, when the child is ready by himself or herself, they come in and they actually see the others working on things which encourages them and encourages their curiosity. This is what enables every adult within Anurag to make sure that the child is interested and learning and ready to receive, which comes to the next aspect, which is absorbent mind. Children and their mind is like a sponge and they absorb everything around them, be it at home or in the school. Everything that they see is recorded within them. This enables, given the current situation, that given the time that there are spending time with family, with parents, a lot of things that the child learns is what he or she would actually put into practice as well. So it is all the more important, given this time, that we as adults make sure we provide the right environment for our children, which goes into the next aspect, which is the sensitive periods. Based on the observation by Dr. Maria, initially, she actually determined and she identified that children of specific ages or specific periods per se are ready for certain skills. This can vary from a child to child, but what forms the curriculum for every year of Montessori, be it Montessori 1, Montessori 2, and Montessori 3, the three primary years? The activities that are designed to form the curriculum are based on these sensitive periods. For example, in the first year of Montessori, everything that is done from an activity perspective is for the child to develop their sensorial, to develop everything that is needed that would enable them to actually hold or grip a pencil and be ready to write. But writing itself is not something they would do in the first year. Everything that is needed is what is being prepared in the child for it. The fourth aspect is talking about the prepared environment. The environment specifically that is designed should enable the child to do things themselves. It should give them that very key, important, and necessary independence to choose what is appropriate for them. Of course, this has the onus of the adult to make sure that only those that are suited are available in that environment. Though this is easier said than done in a school setting than at home, this forms a very, very key aspect to make sure that the child is concentrating and learning the right thing at the right time. Another key, very aspect of Montessori is auto education. Every tool that is given, like the environment, the encouragement, the inspiration, the guidance, all of these form the core components that will enable the child to learn themselves. The direction that is given by the adult, be it the parent now in this aspect or the adult at school, is in such an extent that the child is taught of how it is done. But beyond that point, the child automatically is ready to learn because they are focused and they have selected the activity that they want to do. That freedom that is there from respecting the child aspect as well as the absorbent mind and the prepared environment is what culminates into auto education. When we talk about Montessori at home, there are certain things that should be kept in mind by the parents and the adults at home to enable the child to progress in the right manner. We would like to capsulate those into six key aspects. The first thing is the fact that there has to be a dedicated time and place for the child to work every time there is, when we talk about school activities that the child would need to do. Though the schedule may be not every day but specific days of the week, based on the parent's understanding and based on how the child is progressing, certain time every day from the same schedule could be used with certain activities as given in the schedule itself for the child to work on. This will automatically make the child aware that this time, say when it starts at 10 in the morning, which is convenient for the adult as well, that 10 in the morning every day is when my school would start. Having that discipline is extremely important, just as if the child is coming to school physically on a regular day. The next aspect is, again, we would not call it mandatory, but conforming to the Montessori method, the child has to work on a mat rather than sitting on a chair and at a table. We may think, why is this very important? This is where we talk about it being, Montessori also being as part of Indian culture as well. Traditionally, in the schools, all the children would sit down because physically, when a child is squatting down, the back is erect and the child is actually focused and the mind is open to receive, which is exactly what Maria Montessori observed when she thought about the Montessori system as well. These are the kind of various parallels that actually ensure that when you talk about Montessori, a lot of the key elements match when we talk about Indian culture as well. The third and very important aspect is that the adult has to insist that the child works only on one activity at a time. Multitasking is something that every adult does, which I'm sure, given the time constraints, is needed as well. But as a child that is learning something for the very first time or in a repetitive way, it is very important that they focus on one activity at a time, which also tells about when a child is not interested to do a particular activity, it is fine. But please make sure that the adult insists very clearly that the child winds up the activity which they or might have chosen before taking the next activity. In many Montessori specific activities, we have also shown in the aids how a specific activity should be wound up as well, because everything is done in a very systematic manner in the Montessori methodology. To enable this and the child to focus, though it is more difficult in practice than in saying it, but we as adults should make sure that there are minimal distractions for a defined period so that the adult can also focus on the child. This may be phones, it may be anything else. That's why the time that is determined for a child to work at home should be something that is consistent and also that is feasible for the adult at home. Finally, like we started the presentation, all the virtual enablers that Anurag provides are only for the consumption of the adult or adults. At Anurag, we do not intend the child to actually sit at a recorded session or a video where they actually have to attend class virtually. Neither is this Montessori, nor is it what Anurag propagates. Coming to the brass tacks, which is the approach of Anurag, it is a comprehensive manner that would enable the development of the child in the Montessori way, but with the adult at home. It effectively utilizes physical as well as online or virtual tools and enablers, and the combination of this will actually enable that there is appropriate guidance for the adult in a Montessori way, a defined schedule and sequence that is designed based on the child's current stage, and finally, have a connect with the adults of Anurag for addressing the concerns or clarifications that the adult might have for the child. This aspect, where a teacher is also virtually available, is what really stands out for Anurag and the students that are enrolled in it. When we talk about the Phygital approach, this talks about the physical as well as the digital. What do we mean? Coming to the physical, there would be specific Montessori aids given based on when they are in the specific schedule. Again, all of these would be given based on how long the child is enrolled for the specific set of period. Also, there are specific learning sheets based on various topics that are not fun, not just fun for the child, but they're also extremely interesting for the adult to work with the child in a focused manner. Digitally, the schedule is something that is available on Google Calendar, and this is something that is viewable either from the phone, a desktop, a laptop, or a tablet. All of these session activities are very clearly given in the Google Classroom, which actually has a study aid associated with the activities in the schedule on the Google Calendar. The enrollment for the child or the student is done via a Google or a Gmail account. This can either be one of the parent's IDs or something that the parent has created specifically for the child, which is actually more suitable. And finally, WhatsApp is a tool that would be used for interaction and notification from school. All of these put together would provide the necessary platform. And again, if you look at it, what the parent would actually use continuously would only be the calendar to look at what needs to be done, and the Google Classroom to look at what is needed for that specific activity schedule given in the schedule, sorry, and also to submit the work so that the adult from Anurag can review and make sure that the child is progressing in the right way. If not, they can reach out and let you know how it should be done correctly. So, the aspect of the adult from Anurag looking at every activity that the child does is covered in the aspect of the Google Classroom. Once enrolled, we will also share the guide of how this would be done in a step by step basis so that there is no question that the parent would have from a everyday perspective of looking at activities as well as submitting activities. As an example, the schedule is such that the various topics, be it sensorial, language, exercises of practical life, artwork, as well as action rhymes and stotrams, is something that we given. Given the current age, the schedule is such that it will be given for the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, assuming one of these are not a holiday or a national holiday or things like that. The schedule is created in such a manner that if any activity doesn't get completed on a specific day, for example, say the language assignment that is given on Monday is not completed, then the parent can sit with the child and do it on Tuesday or any of the other days. But the key thing to understand here is the schedule that is given has to be meticulously followed because all the activities that are given on a particular day must be completed before going to the next set of activities. Because this sequencing of activities has been created based on the extensive experience of the adults at Anurag to make sure that it conforms to the Montessori understanding that the child needs, which is gra- gradual and progressive in the right manner in terms of ease of doing as well as from a concept perspective. As it gets more difficult, the child would need specific steps to ensure that they understand each thing, and at each stage the difficulty may keep increasing. Hence it is very important that the schedule must be followed. So for example, when you talk about how the sloka looks, so the parent would actually have a video with the lyrics of the stotram, And also, the audio would actually talk about how it should be chanted. From a rhyme perspective, the lyrics of the rhyme, as well as how the rhyme is sung, is also given in the same way in a video form. All of these have been created in such a way that they are appropriate for the age. And also, why it is very important that we have sloka every day is the fact that I'm sure many of you might have read or know that learning Sanskrit enables various situations and issues for a child from a verbal perspective to be overcome. Many children may have lisp or some other issues with pronunciation of various alphabets or sounds phonetically. Learning and reciting in Sanskrit helps us to overcome a lot of those. And also, praying to a higher deity to start the day is definitely something that we would teach our children to make sure that they are given the right energy to start their activities. Going ahead, when you talk about language and you talk about exercises of practical life, there are videos created wherein it explains to the parent of how a particular alphabet actually has been written by the child. So we use sandpaper alphabets and sandpaper numbers for the same, wherein the teacher from Anurag or the adult from Anurag actually shows how A or A is written. When the child is ready and understands completely how it is, and also I'd like to point out that from a Montessori perspective, this would be in lowercase and always in cursive. So when the child is ready to start writing, they very well know of how the curves are and how the various alphabets are actually written. The sequence of these alphabets also is not like the ABC that we have learned, but they are based on the vowels and then the consonants, and also based on which alphabet gets used more often in the English language. So everything has a very clear, systematic, and scientific way for a child to learn. So using the Google ID or the Gmail, the child will be enrolled into the Anurag Montessori Google Classroom. Every day, the schedule that needs to be followed would be visible on the Google Calendar for the adult. The schedule will have activities and exercises that may require some guidance or supporting material, and all of these would be assigned in the Google Classroom and are also stored on Google Drive, which can be downloaded easily on any of these, be it a phone or a tablet or a laptop, for the parent to actually use for the child. Again, these aids or tools that are downloaded are going to be used by the parent alone, and they need not be shown to the child at all, which is the expectation very strictly from the adults at Anurag. Given the situation wherein the parent or the adult at home plays a very key aspect of learning, there is a partnership that always has existed between a parent and a teacher, but there are certain things what we definitely like to focus on to make sure these are given the right importance. First of all, including your child in everyday chores like cooking, dusting, all of these help the child to develop their motor movement, their vocabulary, and their self reliance. This actually builds a child's confidence, which is very, very key in Montessori method, because Montessori believed and also believes still to this day as a system that every child is capable of doing things themselves, that independence is a primary aspect that we'd like to address. The next and very, very important thing, helping your child with the needed guidance, but giving them the time to understand and work it out by themselves. What it means is that some activities, some children might want to do n number of times. It may seem you already know it. Why don't we go to the next one? But if a child is actually wanting to do that activity over and over again, there is some unmet need that your child is actually deriving from each instance of doing that specific activity. There is a learning that your child is getting from each of those repetition of activities, which is very, very important because respecting the child, if you recollect, is a very important principle in Montessori. Then again, like we had mentioned earlier, the adult has to very, very sincerely and strictly follow the schedule and the sequence of activities given because all of these have been created and designed based on the progress that the child needs to make as per the Montessori pedagogy. This schedule is created in such a way as if the child was coming to Anurag physically, this is the progress that the child would make from one activity to the other, which is exactly what we would like every adult to follow. Ensuring that the adult assists the child, they also need to make sure that they follow the instructions, including the pronunciation and sequence of steps that are given in the specific videos. Why is it done in a particular way? Because Montessori is a very scientific and systematic approach to every aspect of education. Hence, all the instructions given are something that every adult would follow in a pure Montessori methodology, and hence, we request the adult to do the same. This sets up the child to do everything in the right fashion. The staff of Anurag again would be available for clarifications from 11 to 12 in the morning and then from 5 to 6 in the evening. The contact details is something that will be shared with you, but again, this partnership is very vital given the current stage, and believe me, based on what we have received from the various parents that are already engaged in this, they love it. Some of the reviews that I'd just like to bring to your attention is the aspect of how all the parents that are already engaged with Anurag from the Phygital perspective have totally fallen in love. And they've also said that the various aspects of education is something they have really learned working with their children in this Montessori way. So I really would request you to go through this to understand something that the parents have said themselves, because from one parent to the other, all of the aspects of Montessori is something that we have covered when we talk about this approach. Though Montessori may not be something that is familiar for the parent, the understanding and the assumption that is made is such that the parent has no background of it, and everything that is created enables the parent to help the child in the right way, in the Montessori way. These are our contact details. Please note them down. We'll be available on phone as well as via email, and you can also read all of the reviews in the Anurag website. Finally, we would like to say that Anurag has always believed that every child has the potential to be a genius. Thank you.